My parents disowned me and still expected me to fund their retirement. I never thought I'd be the kid my family stopped talking about. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The oldest, the fixer, the backup plan when everything went wrong. If my parents needed help with bills, I covered it. If my younger siblings messed up, I smoothed it over. If there was tension at family dinners, I swallowed my feelings so everyone else could be comfortable. I thought that's just what family does. Turns out, family is also really good at taking advantage of the person who won't say no. This all started about 3 years ago, right after I got a decent-paying job. Nothing insane, but enough that I wasn't constantly checking my bank account before buying groceries. I was proud of myself. First time in my life I felt like I was finally getting ahead. That's when my parents started calling more. At first it was small stuff. Hey, can you help with the electric bill this month? We're a little short on rent. Your dad's hours got cut. I said yes every time. Because they were my parents. Because I remembered them working overtime when I was a kid. Because guilt is a powerful thing. Then the asks got bigger. My mom needed a new car because hers was unreliable. My dad wanted help refinancing credit card debt I didn't even know existed. My siblings needed help with school supplies, phones, random emergencies that somehow always landed on me. I was basically a third parent with a checkbook. What really hurt is that none of this came with gratitude. It was expected, like I owed them for existing. Anytime I hesitated, my mom would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Well, I guess we'll just figure it out somehow," or "I didn't raise you to abandon your family." That line worked on me for years, until I met my now wife, Anna. Anna noticed things I had normalized, like how my parents only called when they needed money, or how my siblings treated me like an ATM but never showed up for me emotionally, or how anxious I got every time my phone rang. She never told me to stop helping them. She just asked questions. Do they ever help you? What happens if you say no? Why are you paying for things your parents chose not to budget for? I didn't have good answers. The breaking point came when Anna and I got engaged. We were planning a small wedding. Nothing fancy. We were paying for it ourselves, carefully budgeting, actually excited. I told my parents the date, and instead of congratulations, the first thing my mom said was, "So you'll still be helping us out monthly, right?" Not "I'm happy for you," not "congratulations." Just money. I told her things might be tighter now that I was getting married. She didn't take that well. She accused Anna of changing me, said I was being selfish, said marriage didn't mean I stopped being a son. My dad chimed in later, telling me I was forgetting where I came from. I still didn't cut them off. I just reduced how much I gave. Apparently that was unforgivable. A month later, I found out through my sister that my parents had told the entire extended family that I'd abandoned them and chosen my wife over my own blood. They said I'd refused to help them and left them struggling. None of that was true. But suddenly cousins stopped replying to my texts. An aunt messaged me saying she was disappointed in the man I'd become. Even my grandma asked if everything was okay, like I'd done something horrible. I felt sick. I called my parents to confront them. My mom didn't deny it. She said, "Well, what else are we supposed to tell people? That our own son doesn't care if we're suffering?" That was the moment something snapped. I told her I'd been paying thousands of dollars over the years, that I'd sacrificed vacations, savings, peace of mind, that I was tired of being treated like an obligation instead of a person. She cried. My dad yelled. They told me if I couldn't support them like family should, then maybe I didn't need to be part of the family at all. And just like that, I was disowned. No dramatic letter, no official announcement. Just silence. They didn't invite me to holidays. My siblings stopped reaching out unless they needed something. My parents told people I was dead to them. It hurt more than I expected. Even after everything, part of me hoped they'd apologize. Or realize how wrong they were, or at least miss me. Instead, 6 months later, my mom emailed me. Not to reconcile. To ask for money. She said my dad was thinking about early retirement because work was too stressful and they needed help transitioning. I read that email 3 times. Early retirement. After disowning me. After trashing me to the family. After telling me I wasn't their son anymore. They still expected me to fund their life. For the first time ever, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. I replied politely. I told her I wasn't able to help financially anymore. I wished them well. She responded within minutes. She called me ungrateful, said she should have never sacrificed for me as a child, said God would judge me, said Anna had poisoned me against them. Then she blocked me. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A few weeks later, my aunt called me, furious. She accused me of letting my parents starve. I calmly explained everything. The money, the lies, the disowning. She went quiet. Then she said, "That's not what they told us." Apparently, my parents had been asking multiple family members for money, telling each person a slightly different story. They said I cut them off completely, that I was rich and selfish, that they had no one else. But they slipped up, because they told one cousin they were disowned by me, and another cousin that they disowned me. Family started comparing notes. The truth unraveled fast. People realized my parents weren't just struggling. They were irresponsible. They had blown money on vacations, gambling, and impulse purchases while expecting me to cover the basics. They hadn't planned for retirement at all. Their suffering was self-inflicted, and they had burned the one person who'd been bailing them out. Suddenly, my phone started buzzing again. Cousins apologizing, aunts admitting they were wrong, my grandma telling me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even my siblings reached out awkwardly, saying they didn't know the full story. My parents, they didn't apologize, but they stopped asking for money. And here's the satisfying part. About a year later, Anna and I bought a house. Modest, but ours. We posted one photo online. Nothing flashy. My mom somehow saw it. She emailed me again. This time she said she missed me. That family is important. That life is short. She asked if we could put the past behind us. I replied once. I told her I was open to having a relationship. With boundaries. No money, no guilt, no rewriting history, and accountability for what she said about me. She never replied. And honestly, that told me everything. I didn't lose my family. I lost the version of family that only loved me when I was useful. Now I have peace. I have a wife who respects me. I have chosen family who show up without asking for anything in return. And for the first time in my life, my bank account and my conscience are finally mine.
I paid for my sister's wedding, and she banned me from attending. I didn't always know my family was broken. When you grow up inside dysfunction, it feels normal, like gravity. You don't question why everything feels heavy, you just learn how to stand under it. I'm the oldest child. That matters. Anyone who's the oldest already understands what that means without me explaining it. Responsibility came early, all right from the world. So I can think that one must take a price for others. I learned fast that love in my house wasn't unconditional. It was earned through usefulness. My parents had my sister Lily when I was 6. From the moment she came home from the hospital, the rules changed. Lily cried and the world stopped. Lily wanted something and everyone scrambled. Lily messed up and somehow it was still someone else's fault. Usually mine. By the time I was 10, I was making her breakfast, walking her to school, helping with homework. By 12, I was babysitting so my parents could have a break. By 16, I had a job because you're old enough to help out now. Really never had a job in high school or college or, honestly, adulthood. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up, my parents loved to tell people how proud they were of me, how responsible I was, how mature, how they never had to worry about me. What they didn't say was that I learned very young that causing problems meant being punished with guilt, silence, or disappointment. Lily could scream, slam doors, say horrible things, and it was brushed off as her being emotional. If I ever pushed back, I was selfish. So I learned not to. I went to college on scholarships and loans. Lily went to college because my parents paid for it. When I graduated and landed a decent job, my parents framed it like a family win. Now we can all breathe easier, my mum said. That was my first red flag, and I ignored it. The money request didn't start aggressively. They never do. It's always framed as temporary. Just until things stabilize. Just until your sister finds her footing. Just until next month. I sent money for Lily's rent when she forgot to budget. I paid her phone bill when she lost track of time. I covered groceries, car repairs, random emergencies that somehow always followed a shopping spree or a weekend trip. Every time I hesitated, my parents reminded me how much they'd sacrificed for me growing up. I believed them. Then Lily met Mark. Mark was charming, in the way guys are, when they know they don't have to try very hard. He had big plans, vague goals, and a lot of opinions about how things should work. He also had zero interest in holding down a stable job. They dated for 2 years, mostly supported by my parents, who were mostly supported by me. When Lily announced they were engaged, my mum cried happy tears. My dad popped a bottle of wine. Everyone hugged. I smiled and clapped, and swallowed the dread forming in my stomach, because I knew what was coming. Sure enough, a week later, my mum asked if I could come over to talk about something exciting. That something was the wedding. Not the date, not the location, the budget. They wanted a big wedding. Like really big. Venue, open bar, live band, custom decorations. Lily had a Pinterest board the size of a small novel. My parents didn't have the money. Mark didn't have the money. So naturally, they looked at me. "We were hoping you'd help," my mum said, already emotional. "You know Lily's always dreamed of this." I asked how much. They slid a piece of paper across the table. It was more than my yearly rent. I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought it was a joke. No one else did. My dad said, "Think of it as an investment in family." That phrase still makes my skin crawl. I said I couldn't do all of it. I offered a smaller amount. Still significant. Still painful, but manageable. Lily burst into tears. She accused me of ruining her special day. Said I was jealous. Said I always had everything handed to me. That one hurt. Because nothing was handed to me. But my parents didn't correct her. They just looked at me, disappointed. I caved. I told myself it was one time, that after this, things would change. The family would finally appreciate what I did. I paid deposits, vendors, venue, dress, flowers, things I didn't even know weddings needed. I didn't get a thank you. What I got was criticism. Really didn't like the color scheme I suggested. Didn't like the seating plan. Didn't like that I asked questions before transferring money. She started excluding me from decisions while still expecting me to pay. Then came the phone call. 2 months before the wedding. Lily told me she didn't want me there. At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said my energy was stressful, that I made everything about money. But she wanted only people who were fully supportive at her wedding. I reminded her I was paying for it. She said that was my choice. My parents backed her. They said maybe I should sit this one out to avoid conflict. I felt something in me finally crack. There, I told them I wouldn't pay another cent if I wasn't welcome. That's when everything exploded. They accused me of manipulating Lily, of holding money over her head, of trying to control her wedding. They said if I pulled funding, I'd embarrass the family. So I did something I'd never done before. I said no. I stopped payments. I cancelled what I could. The rest fell on them. They told everyone I sabotaged the wedding, that I was bitter and cruel, that I abandoned my sister during the most important moment of her life. I wasn't invited. The wedding happened anyway. Smaller, messier, visibly rushed. I didn't attend. And after that, silence. No holidays, no check-ins, no updates. I was erased. For months, I wondered if I'd done the wrong thing, if I should have just swallowed it, like always. But something unexpected happened. I started sleeping better. My anxiety faded. My bank account stabilized. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. Then the calls started. Not from my parents. From extended family. People wanted to know what really happened. Because Lily and Mark were already struggling. Because my parents were asking for money again. Because stories weren't lining up. I told the truth. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Just facts. Receipts helped. Screenshots helped. And slowly, quietly, the narrative shifted. People realized I wasn't the villain. A year later, Lily and Mark divorced. The money dried up. My parents tried to reconnect. They said family should move on. That holding grudges was unhealthy. They never apologized. I told them I was open to a relationship, but not a financial one. They said that was unfair. I said that was my boundary. They chose not to cross it. And that's the ending people don't expect. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No tearful apology. Just clarity. I built a life where love isn't conditional on what I provide, where respect isn't earned through sacrifice, where I'm allowed to say no without punishment. And every once in a while, I think about the wedding I paid for and didn't attend. Then I look at the life I have now, and I know I got the better deal.
My arrogant architect brother mocked my construction job for years. I just secretly bought his firm. Part 1. The Weight of Glass. The mud on a job site tastes different depending on the season. In August, it tastes like dust and baked clay, gritty between your teeth even when you haven't opened your mouth. In November, it tastes like rot and wet iron. I stood on the edge of the excavation pit for the Northline Medical Center, watching the excavators chew into the earth. It was 5:30 in the morning. The sun hadn't crested the horizon yet, leaving the world in a bruised shade of purple-gray. My breath plumed in the air, mixing with the diesel exhaust of the idling Cat 330. "Mark," the foreman, Sal, grunted, walking up beside me. He held 2 coffees in a cardboard carrier that looked like it had been run over. "Inspector's gonna be late. Says traffic on the I-95. I took the coffee. It was black, burnt, and perfect. "He's not stuck in traffic, Sal. He's stuck at Duncan. Have the boys prep the rebar cages anyway. If he makes us wait, we charge the city for the downtime." Sal grinned, his face a road map of wrinkles earned from 30 years of squinting at blueprints in the sun. "You're a hard-ass, boss." "I'm efficient," I corrected. "Efficiency pays the mortgage." I was 32 years old, the owner of Reynolds Contracting, and I had been tired since I was 16. My hands were permanently stained with the ghost of oil and soil no matter how much Gojo I used. I wore Red Wing boots that cost $300 and were worth every penny, jeans that were actually used for work, and a Carhartt jacket that had seen more weather than most weathermen. I wasn't poor. Far from it. My company cleared 7 figures last year. I had 40 guys on payroll, a fleet of trucks, and a reputation in the tri-state area for being the guy who fixed the messes the cheaper guys made. But looking at me, you'd think I was just another grunt. And I liked it that way. My brother, Julian, would rather die than have dirt under his fingernails. Thinking of Julian soured the coffee. I checked my watch. 5:45 a.m. Julian was probably just rolling over in his Egyptian cotton sheets in his loft downtown, dreaming of cantilevered decks and negative space. Julian was 2 years older. He was the artist, the visionary, the architect. He was also the reason I was standing in the mud at dawn instead of sleeping in. The dynamic started when Dad left. I was 14. Julian was 16. Dad didn't leave a note. He just left a hollow space in the closet where his coats used to be, and a bank account that echoed when you shouted into it. Mom fell apart. Not loudly. She didn't scream or throw things. She just faded. She became a ghost in her own house, working double shifts at the diner, coming home to stare at the television without turning it on. Someone had to become the man of the house. Julian was the oldest, so logically it should have been him. But Julian was fragile. That was the word Mom used. Be careful with Julian. He feels things so deeply. Julian was in the gifted program. He was drawing complex geometric shapes on napkins. He talked about Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier the way other kids talked about Kobe Bryant. When Dad left, Julian retreated into his sketchbooks. He couldn't handle the reality of unpaid electric bills or the shame of free lunch tickets. So I handled it. I stopped playing varsity baseball. I started mowing lawns, then framing houses on weekends. By 16, I was working illegal hours for a framing crew, cash under the table. I dropped out 3 months into my junior year because the foreman offered me full-time wages, and Mom was choosing between heating oil and groceries. I remember the day I told them. Mom cried quietly into her hands. Julian didn't cry. He looked at me across the kitchen table, his biology textbook open. He adjusted his glasses, thin, wire-rimmed, expensive. "It's probably for the best, Mark," he had said. "You were never really academic. Some people are built for the mind and some are built for the back. It's honorable work, moving stones." I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream that I had a 3.8 GPA, that I wanted to go to engineering school, that I was only doing this so he could go to his fancy university. But I didn't. I just nodded. "Yeah. Someone's got to pay for the stones you want to build with, Jules." He went to Cornell on a partial scholarship. I paid the rest. I sent him checks every month for 4 years. I paid for his drafting table. I paid for his final thesis model materials, laser-cut acrylic and basswood that cost more than my first car. He graduated with honors. I graduated to crew chief. He got hired by Ether and Stone, the trendiest, most pretentious architecture firm in the city. I started my own LLC with a beat-up Ford F-150 and a nail gun. 15 years later, the gap between us wasn't just financial, it was existential. The inciting incident didn't happen all at once. It was a slow accumulation of slights, like rust eating through a fender. It was the way Julian introduced me to his colleagues at gallery openings, if I was forced to go. "This is my brother Mark. He's in construction." He'd say it with a pause, a little apologetic smile, as if admitting I had a contagious disease. It was the way he treated waitstaff, mechanics, and anyone wearing a name tag. dismissive, impatient. But the breaking point was Mom's 60th birthday dinner 3 weeks ago. We were at a high-end steakhouse downtown. Julian picked the place, naturally. The Obsidian Room. Dark walls, white tablecloths, waiters who whispered. I had just come from a site. I'd showered and changed into a button-down and slacks, but my hands were rough. I had a bruise on my jaw from a swinging 2x4 earlier in the week. Julian walked in with his fiancée, Claire. Claire was nice enough, an art curator who thought poverty was romantic in paintings but terrifying in real life. Julian looked like a magazine cover. Cashmere turtleneck, blazer, hair perfectly coiffed. "Happy birthday, Mom," Julian said, kissing her cheek and handing her a small, impeccably wrapped box. It was a silk scarf. Hermes. I knew he couldn't afford it. I handed Mom my gift. I'd paid off the remainder of her mortgage. It was a single piece of paper in an envelope. Mom opened Julian's first. She cooed over the silk. "Oh, Jules, it's beautiful. You have such taste." "Only the best for you, Mother," he smiled. Then he looked at me. "Go on, Mark. What did you get her? A gift card to Home Depot?" Claire giggled nervously. "Julian, stop." "I'm joking," Julian said, taking a sip of wine that cost $40 a glass. "Mark knows I'm joking. We have a rapport, the intellectual and the industrial." Mom opened my envelope. She read the document. Her hands started shaking. "Mark," she whispered, "this the house?" "It's yours, Mom," I said, cutting into my steak. "Bank doesn't own a brick of it anymore. You're free and clear." Mom started to cry. Real tears this time. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Julian's smile froze. He stared at the paper. I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He knew exactly how much was left on that mortgage. It was roughly $140,000. "Wow," Julian said, his voice tight. "That's grand. Must be a good year for pouring driveways." "It's a good year for logistics and general contracting, yeah," I said, not looking up. "It's interesting," Julian mused, swirling his wine. "Society pays so much for the execution, but so little for the conception. I designed a library last month, a literal cathedral of learning. But the fees? Barely kept the lights on. Meanwhile, you put up drywall and make a killing. It's a symptom of a culture that values utility over beauty." "Utility keeps the rain off your head, Julian," I said. "Anyone can keep the rain off," he snapped. The mask slipped for a second. "A caveman can build a shelter. It takes a mind to build architecture. You're paid for your body, Mark. Like I'm paid for my mind." "Julian!" Mom gasped. "What? It's true. Mark is the hands. I am the head. It's biblical, almost. Jacob and Esau. I'm just saying it's nice that he can afford to pay off the house, considering he barely passed algebra." I put my fork down. The clatter was loud in the quiet restaurant. "I didn't fail algebra, Julian. I dropped out to pay for your tuition." Julian laughed. A cruel, sharp sound. "Oh, God. The martyrdom of St. Mark. Are we still playing that card? You dropped out because you were bored, and you liked the money. Don't pretend you sacrificed your brilliant academic career for me. You were never going to college. You were destined for the warehouse or the worksite. I just helped you get there faster." He leaned forward, his eyes glittering with wine and malice. "Let's be honest, Mark. Even if you had the money, you wouldn't fit in my world. You look at a building and see bricks. I see the soul of the city. You're a blunt instrument. I'm a scalpel. And frankly, it's embarrassing that you think throwing money at Mom makes you my equal." I looked at him. I looked at his soft hands. I looked at the expensive watch I knew he put on a credit card. I stood up. "Where are you going?" Julian asked, mocking. "Storming out?" "I'm going to pay the bill," I said quietly, "because I know your card is going to get declined." Julian went red. "Excuse me?" "I saw the decline at the bar when we walked in, Julian. You had to use a second card for the pre-dinner cocktails. Enjoy the steak. I'm done." I walked out. I paid the $800 tab at the front. And as I drove home in my truck, listening to the tires hum on the asphalt, I decided I was done being the bigger person. I was going to destroy him. Step 1 was reconnaissance. I knew Julian worked for Ether and Stone. I knew they were prestigious. I also knew from general industry chatter that they were a nightmare to work with. They treated contractors like garbage, delayed payments, and designed buildings that leaked, cracked, and went 50% over budget. but I needed hard data. I have a friend heavy into corporate finance named David. We play poker on Thursdays. Dave, I asked him 2 days after the dinner, I need you to look into a company for me. Ether and Stone. Thinking of hiring them? Thinking of buying them? David choked on his beer. Mark, they're a design firm. You're a GC. That's oil and water. That's vertical integration, I corrected. Just look into them. Financials, debt load, ownership structure. 3 days later, David called me to his office. He looked grim. It's bad, Mark. It's worse than bad. It's a corpse that doesn't know it's dead yet. He spun his monitor around. Spreadsheets. Red ink everywhere. They have immense brand value, David explained. They win awards. They get into Architectural Digest. But their operating costs are insane. They rent a penthouse office in the Arts District that costs $40K a month. They have a bloated staff of junior visionary associates who do nothing. And the owner? Elias Thorne? He's 75, sick, and looking for an exit. How much debt? $4 million, mostly tied to a failed expansion in Dubai and lawsuits from a condo collapse in Miami. And Julian? He's a senior associate there, not a partner. He owns no equity. But here's the kicker. I ran a background check on the key employees to see liabilities. David slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was Julian's personal financial statement. It must have been on file for a company credit line he was authorized to use. Salary, $92,000. Debt, $185,000, student loans, credit cards, personal loan. Assets, $4,000 in a checking account, leased BMW, rented loft. He was drowning. He was making less than my entry-level heavy equipment operators, but living like a Rockefeller. He's insolvent, Mark, David said. One missed paycheck and he's on the street. Perfect, I said. Set up a meeting with Elias Thorne. Use a shell company for the initial approach. I don't want them to know it's me until the ink is dry. The acquisition took 2 weeks. It was terrifyingly easy. Elias Thorne was desperate. He wanted to retire to Tuscany and wash his hands of the lawsuits. When David presented an offer, a cash infusion to stabilize the debt and a buyout of Elias's shares, the old man almost cried with relief. I leveraged everything. I put up my house, my commercial property, and my entire fleet as collateral. If this went sideways, I would be back to framing houses for $15 an hour. But I knew it wouldn't. Because Ether and Stone had great clients. They just had terrible execution. If I brought in my project managers, my estimators, and my discipline, I could turn the company profitable in 6 months. But that was business. This was personal. The closing was scheduled for a Monday morning. 9:00 a.m. I signed the papers in a conference room on the 40th floor of the Wells Fargo building. Elias shook my hand. Take care of her, Mark. She's a beautiful ship, just needs a steady hand. I'll steer her right, Elias, I promised. One condition. You don't tell the staff who bought it until the all-hands meeting. I want to introduce myself. Elias shrugged. I'm on a flight to Rome at noon. Do whatever you want. I checked my phone. It was 9:45 a.m. The all-hands meeting at Ether and Stone was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. I went to the bathroom and changed. I took off my tailored suit. I folded it neatly into a duffel bag. I put on my work clothes, my scuffed Red Wings, my faded jeans with the rip in the left knee, my gray t-shirt with the Reynolds contracting logo on the pocket, stained with a little bit of grease. I put on my Carhartt jacket. I looked in the mirror. I looked like the help. I looked like the guy Julian wouldn't make eye contact with in an elevator. I took a cab to the Arts District. The Ether and Stone offices were ridiculous. The lobby was all polished concrete and frosted glass. There was a waterfall behind the reception desk. A sculpture that looked like twisted metal wreckage, probably titled Hope or something, stood in the corner. The receptionist, a young woman with a nose ring and a headset, looked up as I walked in. Her nose wrinkled slightly. Deliveries are in the back, sir, through the loading dock. I'm not delivering, I said, leaning on her pristine white desk. I'm here for the 10:30 meeting. She blinked. The staff meeting? That's for employees only. Are you with facilities? Is a toilet broken? Something like that, I smiled. I'll just wait. I sat on one of the uncomfortable angular sofas in the waiting area. I picked up a copy of Dwell magazine and pretended to read. At 10:25 a.m. the staff started trickling into the main conference room, which had glass walls visible from the lobby. I saw them, the army of black turtlenecks, the designer glasses, the air of superiority. And then I saw Julian. He was walking with Claire, She must have stopped by for lunch. And two sycophants. He was laughing, holding a latte, looking like he owned the world. He gestured to the glass wall of the conference room, probably explaining how he was going to revolutionize the skyline. He glanced into the lobby. His eyes swept over me. He looked away, then did a double take. He stopped. He walked up to the glass door of the lobby. "Mark?" he said. He didn't open the door. He just stared through it. I stood up and walked over. "Hey, Jules." He opened the door a crack, looking around nervously to see if anyone was watching. "What the hell are you doing here? Did Mom send you? Is she okay?" "Mom's fine." "Then why are you in my lobby looking like that?" He gestured vaguely at my boots. "I have a meeting in 5 minutes, a very important corporate strategy meeting. You need to leave. You're scaring the clients." "I'm not scaring anyone, Julian." "You look like a vagrant," he hissed. "This isn't a construction site. This is a place of business. If you need money, call me later. I can't deal with your drama right now." "I don't need money," I said. "Then go wait in your truck. God, Mark, do you have no shame? Imagine if Elias saw you." "I'd love to see Elias," I said. At that moment, the VP of Operations, a woman named Sarah, who I had met during the diligence phase, though she didn't know it was me then, I was just the investor's rep on the phone, poked her head out of the conference room. "Everyone in?" she called out. "Meeting is starting. New ownership announcement." The room went silent. Whispers broke out. "New ownership?" Julian looked at me, panic flaring in his eyes. "New ownership? Did you know about this?" "I heard a rumor," I said. "God, I hope it's not a corporate firm," Julian muttered, straightening his blazer. "I hope they respect the artistic process. Anyway, Mark, leave. Now." He turned and walked into the conference room. I followed him. Julian spun around as I crossed the threshold into the conference room. "Mark, I said get out. You can't be in here." The room went dead silent. 30 people stared at us. Sarah, the VP, stood at the head of the table. She looked at me. She looked at the paper in her hand. She looked back at me. Her eyes widened. "Sir?" she asked. "Are you Mr. Reynolds?" Julian laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. This is my brother. He's a little confused. He's a laborer. He doesn't understand corporate boundaries. I'll escort him out." Julian grabbed my arm. His grip was weak. "Let go of me, Julian," I said softly. "Come on, Mark, don't make a scene." I pulled my arm away. I walked past him. I walked the length of the long mahogany table. I felt the eyes of every architect, drafter, and intern on my muddy boots. I could hear the squeak of the rubber on the polished floor. I reached the head of the table. Sarah stepped aside, looking terrified and confused. I turned to face the room. "Hi, everyone," I said. My voice was the voice I used to command a site with 50 men and heavy machinery. It projected to the back of the room without effort. "My name is Mark Reynolds. I own Reynolds Contracting." I paused. I looked at Julian. He was standing near the door, mouth open, hand half raised. "And as of 9:00 a.m. this morning," I continued, "I am the sole owner and CEO of Ether and Stone." The silence wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. "This is a joke," Julian blurted out. "Mark, this is a sick joke. Tell them you're joking." "Here's the bill of sale," I said, tossing the blue folder onto the table. It slid across the mahogany and stopped right in front of the VP. "And the transfer of deed." Sarah opened the folder. She scanned it. She looked up, pale. It looks real. He bought Elias's shares. All of them." Julian staggered back against the wall. "But you're a framer. You didn't even finish high school." "Correct," I said. "And yet I just bought your boss out." I leaned forward, placing my knuckles on the table. "Things are going to change. I've looked at the books. You guys design beautiful fantasies that lose money. You spec materials that don't exist. You ignore physics. You treat the people who actually build your dreams like dirt." I looked directly at Julian. "That stops today. We are pivoting to design build. We are going to prioritize buildability, budget, and efficiency. And everyone here is going to learn how a building actually comes together." A hand went up, a young guy in a vest. "Does this mean layoffs?" "Not yet," I said, "but roles will change, drastically." I pointed at Julian. "Julian, step into my office. We need to do a performance review." Julian looked like he was going to vomit. "Your office?" "The corner one," I said. "The one with the view. It's mine now." I sat in Elias's massive leather chair. It was comfortable, but it smelled like old cologne. I spun it around to look out the window at the skyline. I could see 3 cranes in the distance. 2 of them were on my sights. The door opened. Julian walked in. He didn't storm in. He shuffled. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He closed the door and stood there. "How?" he whispered. "Where did you get the money?" "I worked for it, Julian. While you were buying silk scarves and $80 steaks, I was reinvesting. I own real estate. I own equipment. I have equity. You did this to spite me." "I did this because it's a good business move," I lied. It was 50% business, 50% pure uncut spite. And because I'm tired of watching you drown. He bristled. "I'm not drowning." I picked up a file from the desk. "Julian, I own the company. I have access to HR files. I have access to wage garnishment requests. You have $185,000 in debt. You are 3 months behind on your student loans. Your credit score is 580. He went pale. "That's private. Not when creditors are calling the office line looking for you. It's a liability." He sank into a chair opposite me. He put his head in his hands. "So what? You going to fire me? Go ahead. Get your revenge. Tell Mom you won. You're the big man. I'm the loser." "I'm not going to fire you," I said. He looked up, tears in his eyes. "Why not?" "Because you're my brother. And because, believe it or not, you are a talented designer. Your sketches are incredible, but you're a terrible architect." "Thanks," he spat. "I'm serious. You don't know how things are built. You draw things that can't support their own weight. So, I'm keeping you on. Same salary, same benefits." He let out a breath. Okay, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I can stay as senior associate?" "No," I said. He froze. "What?" "You're not an associate anymore. I'm stripping your title. You are now a junior field intern." "A what?" "You're going to the field, Julian. Starting tomorrow, you report to my site at the Northline Medical Center. You report to Sal." "Sal? The guy with the neck tattoos? No way. I'm an architect. I work in an office." "Not anymore. For the next 6 months, you are going to wear boots. You are going to carry lumber. You are going to learn how to pour concrete. You are going to learn what a load-bearing wall actually looks like." "I can't do manual labor. I have bad knees." "You run 5Ks for charity, Julian. Your knees are fine. If you refuse, I accept your resignation. Effective immediately. And since you have no savings and a lease you can't break, I'm guessing you can't afford to quit." He stared at me. The hatred in his eyes was hot enough to melt steel. "You are enjoying this," he said. "I am," I admitted. "But it's also the only way you're going to survive in this industry. You're soft, Jules, and you're arrogant. That's a bad combination. I'm going to fix it." I slid a box across the desk. "What's this?" he asked. "Steel-toed boots, Red Wings, I guessed your size. Don't be late. Sal starts at 6 o'clock a.m. Julian stood up. He grabbed the box. He looked like he wanted to throw it through the window. "I will never forgive you for this," he said. "See you in the mud," I replied. Part 2. The Demotion and the Disaster. The alarm clock is a different beast when you wake up to build the world rather than just design it. I was at the Northline Medical Center site at 5:45 a.m., leaning against the hood of my truck, drinking a thermos of coffee that tasted like battery acid and resolve. The sun was still a rumor in the east, a faint bruising of purple against the black sky. The site was waking up, the groan of hydraulics, the beep, beep, beep of a reversing telehandler, the shouting of men who had been awake for hours. Sal stood next to me, chewing on a toothpick. "He ain't gonna show," Sal said. $10 says he calls in sick. My tummy hurts. I have a tickle in my throat." "He'll show," I said. "He's broke, Sal. Desperation is a hell of an alarm clock." At 5:58 a.m., a pristine silver BMW 5 Series rolled into the gravel lot. It looked absurd parked next to the lifted F-250s and beat-up Chevys of the crew. It hesitated at a mud puddle, inching around it like a cat trying not to get its paws wet. Sal snorted. "Look at that. He's trying not to get the tires dirty on a construction site." Julian stepped out. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. He was wearing the Red Wings I'd bought him, but they were unlaced at the top and clearly stiff as boards. He had paired them with designer work pants, probably from a boutique in Soho that sold blue-collar chic for $300 a pair. They were stiff, dark denim with a selvage cuff. He wore a flannel shirt that was too tight and a vest that looked like it belonged on a fox hunt, not a framing job. He picked his way across the gravel, looking at the site with a mixture of horror and disgust. He looked like an astronaut who had just landed on a hostile planet. "You're late!" Sal barked as Julian approached. Julian checked his Apple Watch. "It is 6:01 a.m. I hardly think—" "Shift starts at 6 o'clock," Sal cut in. "That means boots on the ground, tool belt on, ready to work at 6 o'clock, not parking your space shuttle at 6:01. Julian stiffened. He looked at me, waiting for me to intervene. "Mark, really? This is your foreman?" "This is Sal," I said. "He's your boss. I'm the owner. I don't manage the day-to-day of the laborers. That's Sal's job. If you have a problem, take it up with him." Julian's jaw tightened. "Fine. What is my assignment? Am I reviewing the site plans? Checking code compliance?" Sal laughed. It was a wet, hacking sound. "Code compliance? Nah, college. Today you're on material transport." Sal pointed to a stack of 5/8-inch drywall sheets on a flatbed truck. "Elevator's not commissioned yet. We need those sheets on the 3rd floor. Stairwell B. 2 guys carry a sheet. Don't ding the corners." Julian stared at the stack. There were probably 50 sheets. "That's manual labor." "That's the job," I said. "Unless you want to quit? I have the resignation papers in my truck. Just need a signature." Julian looked at the truck. He looked at me. He looked at the debt he knew was waiting for him. "I'll carry the damn drywall," he muttered. The first week was a study in human misery. I didn't stay on site all day. I had a company to run and now 2 companies to merge, but I got the reports from Sal. Monday, Julian tapped out after 2 hours. He sat in the shade, claiming heat exhaustion. It was 65 degrees. Sal made him sweep the subfloors for the rest of the day. Tuesday, Julian tried to debate the structural engineer about the wind shear rating of the exterior clips. The engineer, a guy named Mike who had been doing this for 40 years, told him to shut up and haul the rebar. Julian sulked for 3 hours. Wednesday, the blisters started. I saw Julian at the pharmacy that evening when I was picking up a prescription for Mom. He was buying moleskin and lidocaine patches. He didn't see me, he was limping. By Friday, he looked like a ghost. He had lost the swagger. His work pants were stained with joint compound and mud. He walked with a stiff, shuffling gait that every laborer recognizes, the first week walk. I stopped by the site on Friday afternoon to hand out paychecks. I did this personally. It was a tradition. When I got to Julian, he was sitting on a bucket, staring at his hands. They were raw. He had taped his fingers with electrical tape. "Check," I said, holding out the envelope. He took it. He didn't look up. "This is barbaric, Mark. You know that, right? You're wasting a brilliant mind on carrying buckets of rocks." "You're building a hospital, Julian. That's not a waste. See that wall over there?" I pointed to a framed partition. "That's going to be an ICU room. Someone's life is going to be saved in that room. And you helped build it. That wall wouldn't be there without the material you hauled." He looked at the wall. "It's crooked," he muttered. "It's plumb within 1/8 of an inch," I said. "I checked it myself." "The design called for a reveal at the baseboard," he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "They just slapped base molding on it. It ruins the floating effect." "The client cut the budget for the reveal, Julian. We value engineered it out, remember? You signed the change order 3 months ago when you were still sitting in your ivory tower." He blinked. "I did?" "Yeah. You approved the budget cut to save money for the atrium sculpture. You traded the patient room details for a piece of art in the lobby. Now you're seeing what that trade-off actually looks like." He stared at the baseboard. For the first time, the abstraction of a change order became a physical reality in front of him. "Go home, Jules," I said. "Ice your back. See you Monday." The real trouble started in week 3. Julian had survived the physical shock. His body was adapting. He wasn't strong, but he wasn't dying anymore. The problem now was his ego. It was bruising faster than his skin. He couldn't help himself. He was an architect. He saw the site not as a process, but as a flawed realization of a perfect drawing. I walked onto the site around 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. I heard shouting coming from the 2nd floor. I ran up the temporary stairs. Julian was standing in the middle of a room, holding a set of blueprints, screaming at Tony, my lead HVAC installer. Tony was a big guy, shaped like a beer keg, with a fuse shorter than a matchstick. It is unacceptable, Julian was yelling, waving the paper. The drawings clearly show the ductwork running through the soffit. You have it exposed. It looks like a factory in here. Read the field notes, you idiot, Tony yelled back, stepping into Julian's space. There's a steel beam there. We can't go through the beam. Then move the beam, Julian shrieked. I stepped between them. Whoa, easy, Tony, take 5, smoke break. Tony glared at Julian. Get this guy off my floor, Mark, or I'm going to accidentally weld his mouth shut. Tony stormed off. I turned to Julian. What are you doing? I'm doing quality control, Julian said, adjusting his glasses, which were dusty. They're ruining the aesthetic. The ductwork is supposed to be concealed. It changes the entire volumetric experience of the hallway. Julian, I said, keeping my voice low, did you look at the structural drawings? I looked at the architectural drawings, my drawings, or the firm's drawings. Architectural drawings are a wish list, I said. Structural drawings are the law. Gravity doesn't care about your volumetric experience. There is a W12X40 beam right there. You can't cut it. The building falls down. Well, someone should have coordinated that. You! I shouted. You should have coordinated that. Ether and Stone drew this. Your team drew this conflict 6 months ago. You drew a physical impossibility, and now Tony has to fix it in the field, which means exposed ductwork. Julian looked at the ceiling. He looked at the massive steel beam blocking the path where the duct was supposed to go. I didn't draw this specific part, he mumbled. It was probably an intern. You stamped it, I said. I checked the records. Your seal is on the permit set. You signed off on a mistake, and now you're yelling at the guy who has to live with it. Julian went silent. He rolled up the blueprints. Get back to the broom, I said. And if you yell at Tony again, I'm putting you on porta-potty cleaning duty. That night, I had dinner with Mom. She made pot roast. It was quiet. How is he really doing, Mark? She asked, pouring gravy. He's miserable, I said. But he's eating humble pie. He needs the calories. Claire called me, Mom said. I paused. What did she say? She thinks Julian has been promoted. He told her he's leading a hands-on structural integration pilot program. He told her he's on site to guide the laborers toward a more refined execution. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on a carrot. Hands-on structural integration? That's creative. I'll give him that. She's worried, though, Mom said, her face serious. She says he comes home exhausted. He falls asleep at dinner. He's too tired to go to the gallery openings. She says his hands are rough. Good, I said. Rough hands build character. Mark, Mom put her hand on mine, don't break him. I know you're angry about how he treated you, and you have every right to be, but he's your brother. He's not as strong as you. He doesn't have to be strong, I said. He just has to be real. For once in his life, I want him to stop pretending. The crisis came in the 4th week, the concrete pour. We were pouring the slab for the 3rd floor deck. It's a high-stakes operation. Once the concrete trucks start spinning, you can't stop. You have a limited window to get the mud down, screeded, and floated before it sets. If it sets too early, you have a cold joint, which ruins the structural integrity. If you mess it up, you have to jackhammer it all out and start over. It costs tens of thousands of dollars. It was a hot day, unusually hot for late September. The concrete was hot. It was curing faster than normal. We were down 2 guys, flu bug going around. I was on the screed board, pulling wet concrete. Sal was on the vibrator, getting the air bubbles out. We're falling behind, Sal yelled over the roar of the pump truck. The mix is setting up. We need more rakes. I looked around. Julian was standing by the water cooler, holding a shovel, looking terrified. He was technically just supposed to be cleaning up spillover, but we needed bodies. Julian, I roared, get in here. He looked at me, eyes wide. In the wet concrete? Yes, grab a rake. Pull the mud to the corners. We're losing the edge. He hesitated. He looked at his boots, his ruined, dust-covered boots. He looked at the gray sludge that was slowly hardening. Move, I screamed. He jumped in. He sank to his ankles in the heavy, wet mix. He almost fell over. He grabbed a rake. Pull, don't push, pull it to the formwork, Sal yelled. Julian started raking. He was clumsy. He was splashing concrete onto his pants, his face, his glasses, but he was moving. My back, he yelled after 5 minutes. It's heavy. It's rock and water, Julian. It's heavy. Keep going. We worked for 3 hours straight. No breaks. Just sweat, cursing, and the grinding sound of the pump. I watched Julian out of the corner of my eye. He was struggling. His face was beet red. He was gasping for air. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The panic of the drying concrete had overridden his ego. When the last truck pulled away and the finishers got on the sliders, Julian collapsed. He literally just sat down in the dirt, covered in gray splatter from head to toe. He looked like a statue that had been tipped over. I walked over to him. I was exhausted too, but I was used to it. I handed him a water bottle. He took it with a shaking hand. He drank it in one guzzle. "I thought I was going to die," he wheezed. "You didn't," I said. "We saved the slab." He looked at the expanse of smooth, gray concrete. The finishers were working it with trowels, making it glass smooth. It looked perfect. "It sets that fast?" Julian asked. In school, they said concrete has a 4-hour workability window." "In a textbook, sure," I said. "In 90-degree heat with a low slump mix? You got 45 minutes. Books don't account for weather, Jules." He nodded slowly. He wiped a smear of concrete off his glasses. "I ruined my pants," he said. "They were ugly pants anyway," I said. He actually chuckled. It was a weak sound, but it was there. "Mark?" "Yeah?" "Does it always hurt this much?" "Only until you get used to it. Then it just hurts a different way." The truce lasted about 3 days. Then the blueprint error happened. This wasn't a minor HVAC conflict. This was a catastrophe. We were laying out the framing for the main lobby atrium. This was the centerpiece of the hospital, a 3-story glass curtain wall that angled outward. It was the signature moment of the design. Sal called me over. He had the laser level out. He looked pale. "Boss, you need to see this." "What is it?" "The geometry doesn't work," Sal said. "The steel erection drawings show the columns at a 15-degree cant, but the glazing specs, the glass, are cut for a 12-degree cant." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. "Are the panels already ordered?" "Ordered? They're on a truck from Germany. They arrive Tuesday." If the steel and the glass didn't match, nothing would fit. The glass panels cost $400,000. They were custom fabricated. You couldn't just trim tempered glass. If they were wrong, they were trash. I grabbed the plans. I laid them out on the hood of the truck. I checked the structural set, S201, 15 degrees. I checked the architectural set, A400, 12 degrees. It was a discrepancy, a massive communication failure between the architect and the structural engineer. And since Ether and Stone, my firm, Julian's firm, was the lead architect, it was our job to catch it. We hadn't caught it. "Who managed this package?" I asked, though I already suspected. I looked at the title block on sheet A400. "Drawn by J. Reynolds. Checked by J. Reynolds. Julian." I looked up. Julian was sweeping the perimeter of the slab, looking bored. "Julian!" I yelled. "Get over here!" He walked over, dragging the broom. What now? Did I sweep in the wrong direction? I slammed his hand down on the blueprint. "Look at this." He looked. He squinted. "Look at the angle, Julian. S201 versus A400. He traced the lines with his finger. He stopped. His face went gray. "Oh," he whispered. "Oh, no." 3 degrees, I said. "You designed the glass for 12 degrees. The engineer designed the steel for 15. The glass is arriving in 2 days. It won't fit." Maybe we can shim it," he stammered. "Shim it? You can't shim a 3-degree difference over 40 feet of glass. The panels won't even touch the frame at the top." I remember this," Julian said, his voice shaking. "The engineer sent an RFI, request for information, asking to change the angle for seismic load. I approved it. I must have forgot to update the glazing schedule." "You forgot?" Sal shouted. "You forgot 400 grand worth of glass?" "I was busy," Julian yelled back, defensive now. "I was working on the gala presentation. I had 10 projects. It was a clerical error." "It's not clerical, Julian," I snapped. "It's fatal. We can't move the steel. It's welded and set in concrete. We can't recut the glass. We are screwed. We are going to miss the dry-in date. The hospital will fine us $10,000 a day for delays." I paced in a circle, rubbing my temples. This was bad. This was the kind of mistake that bankrupted firms. Even with my pockets, this was going to hurt. "Mark," Julian said, his voice small. "I can fix it." "Shut up, Julian. You've done enough." "No, listen, I can fix it." He grabbed a piece of scrap drywall and a carpenter's pencil. He started sketching fast. His hand wasn't shaking anymore. "The steel is 15. Glass is 12. The gap opens up at the top, right? It creates a wedge-shaped void between the mullion and the structure. Yeah, a void that lets in rain and wind, Sal scoffed. Not if we change the profile, Julian said, drawing rapidly. We don't try to make the glass fit the steel directly. We fabricate a transition bracket, a fin that bridges the angle. We make it out of aluminum composite. We paint it matte black. It becomes a shadow box. It looks intentional. He spun the drywall around. I looked at the sketch. He was proposing a custom adapter bracket. It would clamp to the 15-degree steel and offer a 12-degree face for the glass. It adds a vertical stripe to the facade, Julian explained. It breaks up the monotony of the glass. It might look better. I looked at Sal. Sal looked at the sketch. Can we fab that? I asked Sal. Sal scratched his chin. Aluminum brake metal? Yeah. We got a guy in Jersey who can bend that up in 48 hours, but it's going to be a pain to install. I'll install it, Julian said. We both looked at him. I'll install it, Julian repeated. I know how it needs to sit to keep the water line. I'll go up in the lift. I'll make sure it works. You're afraid of heights, I reminded him. You cried on the Ferris wheel when we were 12. I'm more afraid of being the guy who cost the firm $500,000, Julian said grimly. I looked at the drawing again. It was elegant. It was clever. It was a solution only an architect would think of, applied to a problem only a contractor would find. Draw it up, I said. Detailed specs, scale 1:1, get it to the fabricator by noon. Julian dropped the broom. He ran to the site trailer where the computer was. For the first time since I bought the company, he wasn't running away from work. He was running toward it. The installation took 3 days. We worked through the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I watched Julian in the boom lift, 60 feet in the air. He was strapped into a safety harness, wind whipping his flannel shirt. He was holding a piece of black aluminum, shouting instructions to Sal, who was in the basket with him. Left! Twist it left! The reveal has to be even! He wasn't complaining about the cold. He wasn't checking his watch. He was focused. I was on the ground managing the glass crew. When the first panel of German glass was lifted into place, it was the moment of truth. The crane lowered it. It hovered over Julian's custom bracket. It slotted in, perfect fit. The seal compressed, the angles aligned. A cheer went up from the ground crew. Julian leaned over the railing of the lift, 60 feet up. He gave a thumbs up. He was grinning, a real grin. Not the smarmy cocktail party smile. A jagged, adrenaline-fueled, I just built something grin. When the lift came down, his legs were shaking so bad he almost fell out of the basket. I walked over to him. Not bad, College, Sal said, slapping him on the back hard enough to dislodge a lung. Not bad. Julian looked at me. He was covered in silicone sealant and grease. We saved it? He asked. You saved it, I said. You caused it, but you saved it. He nodded, wiping his forehead and smearing black grease across his nose. Mark, he said, I think I need to break up with Claire. The pivot caught me off guard. What? She came by last night, while I was drawing the brackets. She saw me. I was dirty. I smelled like sweat. She asked me why I was playing dress-up. He looked at his hands. I tried to explain the bracket, the geometry, the solution. She looked bored, Mark. She just asked if it meant we'd be late for the gala. He looked up at the half-finished building, the steel skeleton rising against the sunset. I realized she doesn't see the building. She just sees the plaque with my name on it. And I don't think I care about the plaque anymore. I care about the glass fitting. I put my hand on his shoulder. Come on, I said. Let's go get a beer, a cheap one. God, yes, Julian said. Something domestic. Part 3. The Reconstruction and the Reveal. 6 months is a long time in construction. In 6 months, a hole in the ground becomes a structure. A skeleton gets skin. A drawing becomes a place. It's also enough time for a man to break and reset. Julian didn't stay in the field forever. That wasn't the plan. He wasn't a laborer. He was a designer. But for those 6 months, he lived the life. He learned how to drive a lull, a telescopic forklift. He learned that flush on a drawing means close enough in reality. He learned that every line he drew cost someone sweat. By December, the Northline Medical Center was dry and complete. The glass facade, with Julian's custom black fins, was stunning. It won an award from a local trade magazine, not for visionary design, but for innovative engineering solutions. Julian framed the article, It was hanging in his cubicle. Yes, cubicle. He was back in the office now, but the office had changed. I had gutted Ether and Stone. Not the staff, though the dead weight was gone, but the culture. We moved out of the $40,000 a month penthouse and into a renovated warehouse in the Navy Yard. It was raw, industrial, and half the price. We put the architects on the second floor and the project managers on the first. We cut a hole in the floor and put in a spiral staircase so they had to talk to each other. Julian was no longer junior field intern. He was now director of design integration. His job was simple. He reviewed every drawing before it went to the field. He looked for the impossible. He looked for the expensive. And he fixed it. But the real test, the final exam, was personal. It was Christmas. Mom usually hosted Christmas. But this year, her house was being fumigated. Termites. Long story. So I offered to host. I invited Julian. I hadn't seen him socially much since the breakup with Claire. He had been quiet. He was living in a small apartment in Queens now, having finally ditched the loft he couldn't afford. He was paying down his debt. He was driving a used Honda CR-V. He arrived at my house at 2 p.m. He didn't bring wine. He brought a toolkit. "Hey," he said, standing on my porch in jeans and a sweater that looked like it had been washed, not dry cleaned. "I heard you were renovating the nursery for the baby." Sarah, my wife, was 8 months pregnant. We were expecting a girl in January. "Yeah," I said, surprised. "I haven't had time to finish the trim." "I'll do it," Julian said. "I got pretty good with a miter saw on the hospital job. Sal taught me how to cope the corners so they don't open up in winter." I stared at him. "You want to install baseboards on Christmas?" "Better than talking politics," he shrugged. "Point me to the wood." I watched him work for a bit. He measured twice. He cut once. He coped the inside corners with a coping saw, carefully back-cutting the profile. It was slow work, but it was precise. He wasn't arrogant about it. He was focused. "Mom's coming at 4 o'clock, I said, leaning in the doorway. "I'll be done by 3:30, he said, not looking up. "Hand me the nail gun." I handed it to him. "So," I said, "how's the new apartment?" "It's small," he said. Thwack hiss went the nail gun. "The radiator clanks. The view is a brick wall." "Sounds terrible." "It's honest," he said. He stopped and looked at the trim. "I like it. I sleep better. I don't have to panic every time the rent is due. I'm actually solvent. I made my last credit card payment yesterday. Balance is 0. That's huge, Jules." "Yeah." He stood up and wiped sawdust off his knees. "Mark, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Why didn't you fire me? That first day, in the office, you hated me. I deserved it. Why did you keep me?" I looked at my brother. He looked older, but in a good way. The softness was gone. He looked like he could handle a storm. "Because Dad left," I said. Julian froze. "What?" "Dad left because things got hard. He couldn't handle the pressure, so he bailed. I promised myself I'd never do that. Firing you would have been bailing. It would have been easy. Keeping you? Fixing this mess? That was the hard work. That was the construction." Julian looked down at the nail gun. "I thought you kept me to torture me," he said quietly. "Well," I grinned, "that was a bonus." He laughed, a real laugh. "I deserved it," he admitted. "I was an insufferable prick. The golden boy. God, I was exhausting. I don't know how you didn't punch me years ago." "I thought about it," I said, "frequently." "I'm sorry, Mark," he said. He looked me in the eye. "For the comments. For the laborer stuff. For acting like what you do is less than what I do. I know better now. I know how heavy the glass is." "Apology accepted," I said. "Now finish the trim. Sarah wants the crib set up." The final reveal happened in March. We were bidding on the Hudson River Arts Center. This was the big one. A $50 million project. The city wanted an icon, but they were terrified of cost overruns after the last few disasters with other firms. We were up against Stark and Associates, Julian's old rivals. They were sleek, corporate, and expensive. The presentation was in front of the city council. Usually, in the old Ether and Stone, Julian would have gone alone. He would have worn a black suit, dimmed the lights, and shown ethereal renderings of buildings that floated on clouds. He would have used words like juxtaposition and ephemeral. This time we went together. I wore a suit. I clean up, okay? Julian wore a blazer and jeans. We stood at the podium. The Arts Center needs to be beautiful, Julian started. He showed the rendering. It was gorgeous. Timber framing, glass, integrating with the river landscape. But beauty is not enough. Beauty has to stand up. He clicked the slide. The screen changed to a complex 3D model showing the HVAC, the steel, and the plumbing all integrated. This is not just a drawing, Julian said. This is a build plan. We have already sourced the timber from sustainable forests in upstate New York. We have already priced the steel. We have already coordinated the mechanicals. He looked at me. I stepped up. We are Reynolds Design Build, I said. We don't just dream it. We build it. We guarantee the price. We guarantee the schedule. If we go over budget, we eat the cost, not the taxpayer. The council members whispered. A guaranteed maximum price on a design this complex? It was unheard of. How can you guarantee that? The councilwoman asked. This design is ambitious. Because the architect and the contractor share an office, I said, and we share a name. Julian smiled. And because I know exactly how heavy those beams are, I carried the sample myself. We got the contract. The night we signed the deal, we went to Mom's house. She made lasagna. We sat at the table, the same table where Julian used to mock my work clothes, the same table where I had stewed in resentment for a decade. Mom looked at us. She looked at Julian, who was talking about lumber prices. She looked at me, who was talking about design aesthetics. You two, she shook her head, smiling. I never thought I'd see the day. See what? Julian asked, piling salad onto his plate. That you'd switch places, she said. We looked at each other. We didn't switch, I said. We just met in the middle. Speaking of switching, Julian said, reaching into his bag. Mark, I have a proposal for you. He pulled out a folder. I've been looking at the company structure, Julian said. You own 100% of the equity. That's fine. You bought it. But if I'm going to be the director of design for the Arts Center, I need skin in the game. I don't want a salary increase. I want equity. I stopped chewing. Equity? I want to buy in, Julian said. I've saved $15,000 this year. I know it's not much, but I want to buy 5% of the design division. I want to be a partner. A junior partner, but a partner. I looked at the check he had placed on the table. $15,000. It was probably every cent he had. You could use this for a down payment on a condo, I said. Or a new car. The Honda sounds like a lawnmower. I don't care about the car, Julian said. I care about the work. I want to build this with you, Mark, not for you, with you. I looked at Mom. She was holding her breath. I picked up the check. 5% is too low, I said. Julian's face fell. It's all I have. I know, but your value isn't just the cash. It's the IP. The hospital solution? That saved us $50K. The Arts Center win? That's worth millions. I took a pen and wrote on the back of his folder. 10% equity stake, vesting immediately. Buy-in, $15,000 plus 1 year of field intern service, paid in full. I slid it back to him. 10%, I said. Partner. Julian stared at the paper. His eyes got wet. He took off his glasses and wiped them. Thanks, boss, he whispered. Don't call me boss, I said, raising my glass of cheap red wine. Call me partner. We broke ground on the Arts Center last week. I was there at 6:00 a.m. Julian was there too. He wasn't wearing the boutique work pants anymore. He was wearing faded Wranglers and his scuffed Red Wings. He stood next to me as the sun came up over the Hudson River. You know, he said, sipping his coffee, the mud tastes different here. Yeah? I asked. What's it taste like? Tastes like money, he grinned. I laughed and punched him in the arm. Get to work, college. Those stakes aren't going to drive themselves. I'm on it, boss. I mean, Mark. He walked off toward the survey crew, his boots crunching in the gravel, looking for all the world like a man who finally knew exactly where he stood.